So, sorry, I'll clear my throat, start again. So something really stood out to me earlier this week, and it stems from a video I did a while ago. And if you remember, I did a video and I talked about Brock Lesnar being in the Hall of Fame. And at some point in that video, I stopped and I talked about Frank Shamrock. And it was only for maybe a minute, maybe a minute and a half. About why I always felt Frank should be in the Hall of Fame. So this week we're a few days away from the UFC 148 show, and Dana White's been doing some press and he talked about the Hall of Fame because obviously god damn my throat, Tito Ortiz is being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it's well deserved. You'll get no argument from me on that, and it's actually been a long time coming. Anyways, so he started to talk about the Hall of Fame, and Frank Shamrock, the topic of Frank Shamrock came up. And he said that Frank Shamrock doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And he even stated that Pat Miletich was far more deserving. Now, I'm not one of these people that's so new to the UFC that anything that they tell me I will believe. I've been a long-term fan. I've been a fan that's studied, researched, observed, watched the history of the sport, learnt about the history of the sport of MMA, and you can't fool those kinds of people. And you could say, well, the winners write the history, but the people who are smart, who research, kind of know how things really happened, you know. So anyways, well, I'll give you an example. When the WWF used to go around and say that Scott Hall's behaviour was because of bad management, and then when he signed back with the WWE, you know, well, they had excellent management. You can see where I'm going. Anyways, so just listening to that one statement that he did not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame really made me think and wanted me to kind of express myself out on my channel. I don't agree with that. I feel if you want to compare him to Pat Miletich, Frank is far more qualified to be in the UFC Hall of Fame than Pat Miletich. Pat Miletich was that early UFC era version of John Fitch, and that's not in a disrespectful way, but you can kind of see where I'm going now. He was a champion, but he was not the most exciting fighter in the world. I don't think he drew particularly well as a fighter. I mean, he's a great commentator now. I enjoy his commentary. I think he's a great commentator. He trained Matt Hughes. He had that Pat Miletich Fighting Systems camp, and they were very successful. And he could be in the Hall of Fame. I won't say he shouldn't be, but if you're going to say that he deserves to be in it more than Frank Shamrock, then I have to disagree with people on that. Frank Shamrock was the greatest mixed martial artist of the 90s. He was a guy that could do it all. He wasn't this sideshow freak redneck they got from a bar, no offense to rednecks, that they got from a bar, you know, swinging uncoordinated punches like a bum. This was an athlete. This was a guy that could blend the grappling, the striking and the wrestling, a guy that used cardio as a weapon and showed the whole world what the future of the sport was going to be. He was the prototype then for modern MMA that we know now. No Frank Shamrock, there would be no GSP, because I can see a lot of parallels between the two. Frank Shamrock was a guy that basically weighed how much I weigh, what, 190, and I'm getting fat at the moment, but 190. He's a guy that weighed 190 and would fight guys that were 215, 220, 230, 240. He would fight these heavier, bigger guys, and he would go out there and he would beat them, and he'd find a way to beat them. And it was quite something to watch back then, especially now when we've got all these weight classes. You go back and watch one of his old fights, you can kind of see where I'm coming from. Here's a guy that for the 5 fights that he was in the UFC, the promotion was built around Frank Shamrock when he was there, and it should have been. He was a great fighter. He was a tremendous fighter. He's a guy that brought the charisma into MMA, brought the personality into MMA, much like Tito Ortiz did later on. A guy that could just talk you into the building and convince you that what he's going to do is must-see television or a must-see event. Here's a guy that had one of the greatest UFC fights in the company history, and it really pisses me off that when the UFC had their top 100 fights, they deliberately excluded that. But if you go back, and Mixed Martial Artist is another guy, he'll tell you about this fight too. UFC 22, Frank Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz, one of the most dramatic fights with a great ending. You go back and you watch that and you tell me if that doesn't deserve to be recognised as a great fight in UFC's history, because it was. Here's a guy that just did everything. He was labelled the greatest mixed martial artist of the 90s, and because one person doesn't like him, and there's a personal beef there, and I do understand that there is a beef there, he's not going to be in, and it's a shame. The UFC Hall of Fame kind of lacks that credibility a little bit when you don't have a guy like Frank Shamrock in there, but then you have Charles Mask Lewis, and that's no disrespect. Look, I'm even wearing a Tap Out shirt and I love Tap Out, but if you're going to tell me that Charles Mask Lewis deserves to be, that Charles Mask Lewis should be in there but Frank Shamrock shouldn't, it's just like the WWF Hall of Fame when they don't have Bruno Sammartino and Bob Backlund in there. It's just a real shame. Anyways, that's me. My dander is a little bit up, as you can tell. Write your comments and let me know what you think about this. Frank Shamrock does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Is there anyone else that agrees with that or disagrees with that? I disagree with Mike Stracker and his little comment on there, what he said, and I'd love to go to war with him, even though I like his shows. Anyways, write some comments, leave some feedback, spread this around, let's get some discussion going. It's a big week, and let me know what you think. And I've just said that 5 times now, fuck. Write some stuff, I'll get going, and I will hopefully see you soon. Well, actually I'm doing part 2 in a minute, so I'll see you sooner. Bye.